I knew, like, do the same thing, like stay calm and just make sure I get to the hospital.
New footage of NBA YoungBoy just dropped and the streets are losing it. The clip shows him smacking Lul Tim right in the middle of a live show after a fan tossed something on stage. Yes, that Lul Tim, the same one forever tied to the situation surrounding King Von's death. Now, everybody's talking wild, wondering if YoungBoy simply snapped in the heat of the moment, or if he really checked the man people been calling his shooter on camera. The video hit the internet like a lightning strike, and it didn't take long before chaos broke out online. It had all the classic signs of a viral moment: shaky phone footage, people yelling in the background, security pushing through the crowd. And right in the middle of all that madness stood NBA YoungBoy, locked in and looking like he wasn't in the mood for games. Then viewers swear they saw it. YB reaching out and smacking Lul Tim, clear as day. This wasn't just anybody either. Lul Tim has been seen as a hero by Quando Rondo's circle, while King Von's supporters view him like the villain of an entire era. The second the clip landed, the comments were non-stop. People typed things like, "Ain't no way YB just checked his own shooter." Others tried to calm it down, calling it fake, staged, or edited. But what made this moment hit way harder was who it involved. Someone connected to one of the most infamous situations in modern hip-hop history. The internet tried to say it was karma, but anyone who really follows this street storyline knows it's deeper than random energy. For the first time in years, the public started asking a question nobody thought would ever pop up again. What's really happening between NBA YoungBoy and Lul Tim? Because if that clip is real, this wasn't just a slap. It was a message, loud and clear, about who really holds the power in that room. It was YoungBoy sending a clear reminder that no matter who pulled that trigger in Atlanta, he controls the storyline now. And that's exactly why this whole situation blew up so fast. The tension between YoungBoy's camp and the legacy tied to King Von had been simmering long before this so-called slap clip ever hit the internet. Everybody already knew about the 2020 chaos that ended with King Von losing his life. A moment that changed hip-hop forever and put Lul Tim's name in a spotlight nobody expected. That night turned Lul Tim from someone barely known into someone Chicago fans looked at with extreme anger. According to his own words, everything that went down was nothing but confusion, panic, and raw survival instincts. He described it like everything happened in one fast blur. Yelling, fists flying, people running, and then gunfire breaking out all over the place.
Well, you pull out and you shoot 4 times.
Yeah, the gun jam.
He got hit twice himself, once in the hip and once in the backside. And even while bleeding, he claimed he kept his mind cold and steady.
I knew, like, do the same thing, like stay calm and just make sure I get to the hospital.
That same calm attitude would shape the way people viewed him afterward. Because after Von's passing, the whole scene went quiet for a long time, until NBA YoungBoy opened his mouth. At that point, YB was locked up dealing with his own personal battles and refusing to fold to the music industry. That stubborn confidence, that I move how I want type energy, was exactly what made YoungBoy stand out in the first place. He never needed a big machine behind him, never begged for approval, never chased industry love. But when he finally got released, people noticed something different about him instantly. He wasn't just coming out mad, he was coming out calculated. Like someone who had studied every move, every threat, every alliance, and was ready to reclaim control on his own terms. That shift made everything he did hit way harder, and it turned moments like this new footage into pure shockwaves across the culture. Every bar, every diss, every little post from YoungBoy started feeling like it carried a message carved in stone, like he was speaking straight from the battlefield. So when he and Quando Rondo dropped their collab tape, 3,800 Degrees, fans instantly knew this wasn't just another music release. This was Payback wrapped in 808s and bass. In one track, Quando practically turned the night Von lost his life into a tribute. And in doing so, he lifted Lul Tim up as if he was some kind of street legend. But while the music was shaking up the culture, something way darker was happening behind the curtain. Reports started catching fire saying YoungBoy didn't even want to release that project at first. In his Vlad TV interview, Lul Tim straight up said Quando had to convince him because YoungBoy wanted to hold off, maybe even step back from the whole situation entirely.
Yeah, it's like he ain't want to just say, I don't know like 100% everything, but I know he wasn't saying like he didn't want to just drop the tape, like I don't want to drop this with you. He was saying like, let's wait.
And hearing that now, with this new footage out, hits on a whole different level. Seeing YoungBoy smack the same person who helped cement his image during one of the most divided feuds in rap. That's the part that made everyone stop and start asking questions. What changed? That's what social media is spinning over, moving faster than a Baton Rouge DJ switching tracks at a block party. Some people online are saying YoungBoy finally ran out of patience. That all the subliminals and not so subliminal shots from Von's side, especially from Lil Durk, had YB feeling like he was surrounded. And once that paranoia kicked in, everything became personal. And remember that moment when YoungBoy went live yelling, that wasn't just some random meltdown. That was him planting a flag, telling everybody he wasn't backing down from anything.
Been tape at 12. Guy out, shit, just tell a nigga catch up with me.
Lil Durk clapped back immediately with his own line. Your homies die, you'll never slide. It ain't adding up. That one bar sent the whole internet into a frenzy and sparked the fire all over again. Now with this alleged slap footage, people think the entire storyline just flipped. Now picture how the whole situation looks from the outside. YoungBoy sitting at the top of the game, getting poked non-stop by Durk's lyrics. Fans online treating the past like some twisted scoreboard. And right next to him stands Lul Tim, the man people claim sparked the entire storm. To outsiders, it looks like loyalty, like YB is standing beside the person tied to one of the biggest turning points in modern rap beef. But to someone like YoungBoy, a guy who built his name on dominance, power, and staying untouchable, loyalty can start looking like a liability real fast. Then comes the alleged smack. It wasn't a fight, it wasn't chaos, it wasn't even loud. What made people believe the footage was real was the way YoungBoy moved. Calm, cold, controlled, like someone checking a member of his team without saying a single word. No yelling, no wild gestures. Just one sharp motion that felt like it carried a whole sentence. Don't forget who keeps you in position. And instantly, thousands of people connected it to things YoungBoy said before. His past comments about avoiding jail, his mission to stay above the drama, his need to stay in full control. That's the wild contradiction with YoungBoy. He talks about being alone, but keeps soldiers around him. He says he doesn't rock with the industry, but everything he drops hits the industry like a shockwave. He acts like he doesn't care what people think, but every move he makes feels like it's calculated to shift the room. So if this footage is real, this wasn't just a random moment. This was a line being drawn right in front of the world. Back in 2020, YoungBoy might have needed Lil Tim around, but in 2025, everyone can see the roles flip. Lil Tim needs YoungBoy way more. Even Lil Tim's Vlad TV interview tells the story. He described their first conversation after bonding out, and it sounded like YB was calm, supportive, and loyal.
He was just saying like the same thing everybody else saying, like, don't worry about it, what the industry's saying, bro, you ain't did nothing wrong.
But as the years passed and the cameras kept turning toward YoungBoy, his energy changed. The same kid who used to preach loyalty transformed into a man who built a whole throne on top of pressure, loss, and survival. And deep down, everybody knows one truth. When an empire is built on violence, that same energy eventually comes back around. That alleged smack moment feels like one of those full circle moments, the kind that exposes cracks between people who were once locked in tight. It might be the moment where the public got a glimpse of a shift that's been building for years. At first glance, this whole situation looks like just another wild moment from a rapper who lives in the middle of chaos. But for the people who've been watching this story unfold from King Von's final moments to the 3,800 Degrees era to this leaked clip, it feels way deeper than a random outburst. It feels like a message, because behind every viral video, there's always a hierarchy. And in YoungBoy's world, hierarchy is the only thing that keeps everything standing. This is not the same YoungBoy from those early 38 baby days. This is a YoungBoy who's been locked up, crossed by people he trusted, hit with cases, and forced to bury friends long before their time. He's someone who learned the hard way that in this world, being feared gets you a whole lot further than being loved. And after years of the internet painting him as hip-hop's villain, he's finally embracing that identity like it's a crown. The streets might look at this moment as pure disrespect, but to YoungBoy, this feels like discipline, order, a reminder of who calls the shots. And that's why this footage hit harder than any diss track or subliminal lyric ever could. Because if the same man who stood behind you when the world called you a killer just checked you in front of thousands, it means there's a shift happening behind the scenes. And when loyalty starts to crack, the internet never sleeps, and neither do the rumors. The second the clip leaked, TikTok, X, and every YouTube reaction page grabbed it like hungry vultures. Screenshots flew everywhere. People zoomed in on the clip, breaking it down frame by frame like they were analyzing some historic mystery. But behind all that loud commentary was one question nobody wanted to say too casually. Did NBA YoungBoy really check his own shooter? That's not something the streets can brush off, because if it's true, it flips the whole structure upside down. For years, people saw Lil Tim as the loyal soldier, the man who took all the pressure so YoungBoy's circle wouldn't crumble. He was the one who didn't fold when things got dark, the one whose actions turned a parking lot fight into something that shaped rap forever. But when the boss publicly checks the soldier, even if it's just symbolic, even if it's a split-second movement, it sends a message louder than any words. It means the loyalty line just shifted, the hierarchy just tightened, and something bigger might be brewing behind the scenes, and the streets can feel it, even if nobody knows exactly what's coming next. Let's run it back for a moment. After King Von lost his life, Lil Tim wasn't just laying low, he was literally recovering. He'd been shot twice, questioned by detectives, and thrown into one of the most heated legal situations hip-hop has ever seen.
I look at it like some folks giving me my flowers or some folks showing respect.
And while he was out on bond, Quando Rondo and YoungBoy became the two people standing in front of him, shielding him from the storm that followed. In his Vlad TV interview, Tim talked about what it felt like to hear his name echoed through music turned into something unforgettable. He said it made him feel respect, and that word meant everything to him until this new clip dropped. Because now that same respect he believed he earned suddenly looked like it might have been taken away. And truth be told, the tension had been building long before the footage leaked. Even before this moment, people in the industry were whispering that YoungBoy had been distancing himself from the whole 3,800 Degrees era. According to Tim himself, YB wasn't the one pushing for that project. It was Quando. And to fans paying attention, that didn't sound like caution. It sounded like hesitation. And in rap politics, hesitation turns into suspicion real fast. Some fans believe YoungBoy didn't want to reopen anything connected to the Von situation because it boxed him in. This wasn't just Dirk sending subliminals anymore. Police were watching, labels were watching, blogs were watching. Every diss, every lyric, every IG live moment became something authorities could screenshot and save. Even 100K Track King Von's manager spoke on the fallout after YoungBoy dropped Bring the Hook, saying the culture was losing its soul because the beef was coming with real consequences. And that comment hits even harder when you think about how much pain this whole storyline already created, and how much money certain people made off the chaos. But here's the part that keeps circling back. YoungBoy is somebody who thrives off control. That's his whole foundation. He needs to be the one steering the ship, choosing the timing, setting the tone, and deciding who stands beside him. And when someone threatens that control, even unintentionally, it changes the entire dynamic. So looking at Lil Tim's situation and the timing of this leaked clip, it makes the whole thing feel way deeper than a moment caught on stage. It feels like YoungBoy reestablishing his position, reminding everyone around him that nothing moves unless he wants it to. You can feel everything in the way YoungBoy talks these days. The tone, the stare, the way he looks straight into the camera, like he's daring the whole world to challenge him. When he said, "I'm dropping a tape at 12, he didn't say it like an announcement. He said it like a command. His entire empire is built on two things that every rapper either dies trying to protect or loses trying to keep: fear and respect. So if he really did touch Lil Tim on stage even lightly, it wasn't anger, it was business. It was YoungBoy giving a silent warning to everyone around him that nobody in his circle is above being checked, not even the people who once moved for him. The moment the clip hit social media, the entire internet split in half instantly. One side swore YoungBoy crossed the line, saying you never disrespect the man who stood beside your people in a real-life street situation. The other side claimed the move was way overdue, saying YB had been carrying too much weight and needed to tighten his circle before things got messy. Some even labeled the moment a power reset, like YoungBoy was cutting loose any weak links before they had the chance to pull him down. Because here's the reality. The same street code that once made Lil Tim valuable also makes him unpredictable. You can't fully control someone who already proved he'll react first and think later. You can't box in a person who stared death in the face, got hit twice, and didn't fold at all. And YoungBoy, he's witnessed enough betrayal in his life to know how fast loyalty can turn into leverage in the wrong hands. That's why every small shift in his circle matters. Meanwhile, Quando Rondo's name started creeping back into conversations too. People didn't forget. He's the connector between both men, YoungBoy's protege and Lil Tim's brother-in-arms. And that's a dangerous position when two people tied to one of rap's most explosive moments look like they might be drifting apart. Fans quickly noticed Quando went silent. No posts defending Tim, no comments backing YoungBoy, no interviews trying to explain the clip, nothing. And in this game, silence is never just silence. It speaks loud. Sometimes it signals fear, sometimes it signals strategy, and sometimes it signals that the truth is way too messy to clean up with a simple excuse. People close to the situation say the fallout didn't start with the leaked clip. It had been bubbling long before. After the 3,800 Degrees rollout, the tour that was supposed to bring YoungBoy, Quando, and Lil Tim together never happened. And when the interviewer asked Tim whether the tension was trolling or real, he answered carefully, choosing every word like he knew people were listening. That moment, when he said, "I probably wasn't going to be able to go," might have been the silent breaking point. Because when big tour money is on the table and one member of the crew can't move freely, everything shifts.
I believe it really supposed to be on tour, but I know I was on house arrest, so I was like, damn, I know I'm probably not gonna be able to go.
Suddenly, YoungBoy isn't thinking about loyalty or brotherhood. He's thinking about liability, optics, and profit. By early 2025, YoungBoy's career looked cleaner than it had in years, at least legally. He was back on streaming platforms, his label was pushing him harder than ever, and somehow he had become a walking paradox. The most controversial rapper alive who still managed to pull in family-friendly level numbers on YouTube. That's a level of influence most artists could never reach. Meanwhile, Lil Tim's visibility was fading into the background. No new interviews, no music features, nothing to keep his name circulating, just silence. Then suddenly this footage hits the internet, and overnight, the man people were starting to forget comes blasting back into the headlines, but not for anything positive. As soon as the clip surfaced, social media detectives jumped straight into investigation mode. People were analyzing every pixel, from YoungBoy's posture to the chain Lil Tim was wearing. Some swore it wasn't a slap at all, claiming it looked more like a tap on the cheek, maybe even a playful gesture that got twisted by the internet. Others were convinced it was real tension, especially knowing YoungBoy's history of cutting ties fast when someone steps out of line. And if you've watched YoungBoy long enough, you know one thing for sure. Switching up isn't random for him. It's survival. Every shift in his circle, every silence, every cold stare into the camera is part of how he protects his throne and keeps his world from collapsing. YoungBoy has cut off blood relatives, day ones, and people he once called family. So if Lil Tim slipped out of line even a little, it wouldn't be surprising for YB to remind him exactly who signs the checks. The real question now is what comes next, because this footage feels less like a random moment and more like the spark before something major pops off. Fans already notice YoungBoy's recent lyrics sound different. Less street war, more distance, more cold detachment. Almost like he's tired of carrying other people's drama on his back. And if this moment really was about power, it could mark the end of an era. The quiet collapse of the YoungBoy, Quando, Lil Tim triangle that shaped a huge chunk of modern street rap. Because let's be real, when a boss publicly checks someone who once stood in the fire with him, he's not just showing dominance, and he's signaling a shift. And in hip-hop, shifts like that never happen quietly. The fans are watching, the industry's watching, and somewhere, Lil Durk is probably smirking to himself. Because the one thing he could never accomplish from the outside, breaking YB's inner circle, might have just happened from the inside. When power turns into paranoia, everything changes fast. It all started with a blur, shaky phone footage, muffled voices, people moving around, and then a hand suddenly whipping across the frame. At first, nobody could tell what they were watching, but once the camera steadied, for that one quick second, the image was crystal clear. NBA YoungBoy stood in a crowded studio hallway staring down Lil Tim, the same man the world ties to King Von's death. And then in one clean, fast motion that froze the entire internet, YB lifted his hand and appeared to smack him across the face. The The clip was only a couple seconds long, grainy, distorted, low quality, but that didn't matter. It was enough to set everything off. Within 1 hour, it was everywhere. TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, reaction channels, memes, breakdowns, everything. Headlines started exploding. YoungBoy checks his shooter. Lil Tim gets humbled by his own camp. YB just cracked his own empire. And just like that, one tiny piece of footage ignited the culture all over again. In a world already split by loyalty, tragedy, pride, and old wounds, this one moment flipped the room upside down and dragged everybody right back into the fire. To outsiders, the leaked clip might have looked like nothing more than a quick scuffle, a moment you scroll past and forget. But for anybody who knows the history behind these men, that slap was loaded with years of tension, alliances, and buried emotion. It wasn't just YoungBoy checking another rapper. It was YoungBoy checking the same man who shifted hip-hop forever the night he squeezed the trigger outside a hookah lounge in Atlanta. November 6, 2020, the night King Von was killed, flipped the entire rap world on its head. That one moment sparked a chain reaction that split the game right down the center. On one side, you had Lil Durk and OTF, carrying Von's legacy like a battle flag. On the other, you had NBA YoungBoy, Quando Rondo, and the man at the center of it all, Lil Tim. According to Tim himself, that night spiraled out of control in seconds. Fists turned into gunfire, off-duty cops fired back, people were running everywhere, and chaos swallowed the entire block. Tim was hit twice, once in the hip and once clean through his backside. But he survived, bonded out, and instantly became one of the most dividing names in modern rap. To some, he was a protector. To others, he was a villain. But one thing nobody denied, Lil Tim's name would forever be tied to that night in Atlanta. Fast forward to 2022, NBA YoungBoy walks out of jail sharper, colder, and more focused than ever. Months of isolation had turned him into a version of himself the industry hadn't seen before. Calm, confident, and convinced that fear was worth more than any contract or cosign. That mindset set the stage for his collaboration with Quando Rondo, the 3,800 Degrees project, a tape that felt more like a silent victory lap for surviving everything the streets and the industry threw at them. But here's the twist. YoungBoy didn't even want to drop that tape at first. Lil Tim admitted it himself during his interview. Tim said Quando was the one pushing for the release, while YoungBoy wanted to hold back, maybe even distance himself from the energy that came with it. And now, with this new footage resurfacing, that detail hits way different. Suddenly it makes you wonder if the cracks in their circle started forming long before anyone noticed. Because if YB already had doubts back then, this moment might have been years in the making. That hesitation meant everything. In this game, hesitation doesn't just look like caution. People read it as doubt, and doubt turns into suspicion real fast. Behind the scenes, insiders whispered that YoungBoy didn't want to light the King Von feud back up because it made him look guilty by association. Others said he was just being smart, letting the legal smoke clear before anyone added more fuel to the story. Whatever the truth was, Quando pushed forward, and YoungBoy let the project happen, but not without frustration building under the surface. When 3,800 Degrees finally dropped, fans could hear it all over the music. The paranoia, the sharp tone, the cold defiance, even the exhaustion creeping through the bars. Lil Tim still got his verse, his shoutouts, his moment of recognition. But even back then, you could tell YoungBoy's mind was shifting. He wasn't looking at Tim like a brother anymore. He was looking at him like a risk that could cost him everything he had built. And that's exactly why this new footage feels like the last chapter of a story that's been bubbling for years. In the clip, there's no yelling, no crowd losing control. It didn't look like pain, it looked like position. That one motion basically said, I built you. And that's the kind of move only someone like YoungBoy would dare to make. Since his teenage years, YoungBoy's entire empire has been built on control. He doesn't just want loyalty, he expects obedience. But here's the problem. Lil Tim isn't someone designed to bow his head. This is a man who already faced death, took bullets, survived chaos, and walked away without flinching. You can't intimidate someone who's looked danger right in the face and came out alive. And suddenly, all those old interview clips and quotes hit completely different. Because the first conversation YoungBoy and Lil Tim had after Tim bonded out was calm, almost supportive, like two people still locked in tight. But now, that energy feels like a lifetime ago. And this moment shows just how far things have shifted behind the scenes. Back then, YoungBoy acted like a mentor, calm, guiding, steady. But the energy in this new footage, that wasn't a mentor. That was a dictator laying down rules, and the internet wasted no time running wild with it. TikTok edits flooded people's feeds. Twitter threads started breaking down every frame like it was evidence from a crime scene. And suddenly everybody had their own version of what happened. Half the fans claimed the moment looked harmless, almost playful, like the clip was being twisted for clicks. The other half swore they saw real tension, pointing out YoungBoy's posture, his expression, the way Tim didn't react. But honestly, the details didn't matter anymore because perception became reality. In rap, even a rumor can end friendships, ruin alliances, or flip the whole narrative upside down. Speculation quickly turned into accusations. Some bloggers said YoungBoy was tired of Tim's name being tied to the situation with Vaughn, saying it was dragging him into drama he didn't want. Others claimed Tim was trying to separate himself, maybe even go solo and build his own lane. Then came the money rumors. People talking about delayed payouts and loyalty checks. The truth, nobody actually knows, but that never stopped the internet from acting like they had the full story. And then 100K Track, King Von's former manager, had his old Vlad TV interview start trending again. The clip where he talked about the never-ending cycle of disses, losses, and pain. Now those words sound like a warning the whole culture ignored. He said nobody wins in these wars. They just take turns losing in front of the whole world. All the old wounds between OTF and Never Broke Again fans ripped open again. Lil Durk's supporters came out swinging, laughing, clowning, saying the moment was poetic justice. People even brought back Durk's infamous line, "Your homies die, you'll never slide." And that line echoed through every repost, every meme, every thread. To Durk's side of the culture, this wasn't just drama. It was payback. It was a moment they felt flipped the power dynamic they'd been fighting against for years. And still, for the people who truly understand how YoungBoy thinks, this whole moment made perfect sense. YB has always been locked in on dominance, in the music, in his image, in his personal life, in every room he steps into. Even when he dropped that line about Vaughn in Bring the Hook, he wasn't speaking to someone who wasn't here anymore. He was warning everybody who still is. That's how YB communicates, not with apologies or explanations, but with moves that make the whole culture uncomfortable. So if this footage is real, it's not really about betrayal, it's about control. Because YoungBoy isn't just running from enemies, he's running from becoming irrelevant. In a culture that worships chaos and controversy, staying quiet means getting erased. And right now, YoungBoy refuses to fade away, not even for a second. But that kind of non-stop dominance comes with a price: isolation. People close to him have said he barely sleeps, that he spends whole nights pacing, recording, thinking 5 steps ahead. He's cut off collaborators, fired producers, canceled shows, and disappeared for weeks at a time without warning. Some people call that brilliance. Others call it paranoia. But either way, that's what happens when survival stops being a phase and turns into a lifestyle. Meanwhile, Lil Tim has been living in the shadows. No major features, no big interviews since his Vlad TV moment. Barely any movement online. When 3,800 Degrees dropped, fans thought he would finally take off. But instead, his momentum hit a wall. Every time his name came up, one question shut everything down. Is he the artist or the killer? That's the kind of question no PR team on earth can fix. So when this so-called smack leaked, it felt like a full circle moment. Like the storyline finally met the ending people sensed was coming. The same man who stepped up in the name of loyalty now looked like he was the one getting checked for it. And some insiders claim that's exactly why the footage leaked. They say it wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate move from YoungBoy's camp to remind everybody who holds the power in the room. If that's true, it might be one of the coldest, most calculated power plays hip-hop has seen in a long time. A public humiliation disguised as dominance. But even if it wasn't staged, even if it was just a raw moment caught on camera, the damage is already done. The internet saw it, the streets saw it, and the relationship between those two will never look the same again. Once your boss checks you in front of millions, there's no bouncing back from that. Not in the streets, not in the music game, not anywhere power runs the room. And the fallout from this moment could turn real messy, real fast. Word is that people close to Lil Tim are heated. Pride is bruised, trust is cracked, and behind the scenes, there's quiet talk about pulling away from YoungBoy's camp. They're not bold enough to confront YB directly, but the resentment is there, simmering, waiting, refusing to die out. Pride never fades quietly. Meanwhile, Quando Rondo, the one stuck between both sides, has gone completely silent. No interviews, no tweets, nothing but cryptic posts about loyalty being fake and people switching up. For someone who once called both YoungBoy and Tim brothers, that silence is loud. It's the sound of someone realizing that brotherhood means nothing once power gets involved. Even the tour that was supposed to bring them together never happened. And when Tim was asked whether the tension was trolling or something real, he answered carefully, way too carefully. Maybe that answer wasn't just about legal restrictions. Maybe it was symbolic. Maybe even back then, he knew he wasn't part of YB's next move, next era, next chapter. Because for YoungBoy, this chapter is all about legacy. After years of being labeled the villain of the industry, he decided to embrace it. He's not trying to fit in. He's trying to outlast everybody. And if that means cutting ties with the people who once stood in front of danger for him, then so be it. There's something tragic about it, though. This pattern YoungBoy keeps repeating. Every empire he builds eventually burns from the inside. He's gone through this cycle over and over again. Trust, betrayal, silence, then domination. Same script, new cast, and maybe that's the real story behind this footage. It's not shocking because of what it shows. It's shocking because of what it confirms. YoungBoy's biggest enemy has never been Lil Durk. It's never been King Von's legacy. It's never been the industry. It's always been YoungBoy versus YoungBoy. The battle between the person he wants to be and the person the streets turned him into. Every slap, every diss, every feud, it all circles back to one thing. YoungBoy battling the ghost of his own paranoia. The same mindset that keeps him alive is the same thing tearing his world apart, piece by piece. The irony is wild. In trying to control everything around him, he ends up isolating himself even more. Because even now, surrounded by cameras, money, streams, and fame, YB still moves like someone trapped in survival mode. Guarded, cold, always watching, never letting anyone get too close. Because once you let someone close, they get the power to hurt you. And that's a risk he's done taking forever. Fans keep arguing over whether the footage was real or fake, but honestly, none of that matters anymore. In hip-hop, perception becomes reality. What people think happened ends up more powerful than the truth itself. And right now, people believe that the bond between YoungBoy and Lil Tim, the bond that survived years of chaos, has finally cracked. Somewhere in Chicago, Durk is probably smirking, not because of revenge, but because time did what bullets couldn't. It split the opposition from the inside out. And as for YoungBoy, he's gonna do what he always does. Keep going, like nothing happened. He'll hop in the booth, record another raw track, post another cryptic message online, and let the whole world argue about it while he flips pain into content like only he can. But no matter how many new songs he drops, he can't outrun that split-second clip, the moment that reopened every wound from the last 5 years. It's the perfect symbol for YoungBoy's entire career. Brilliant, ruthless, and self-destructive all at the same time. And that's why this story hits so hard. It's about what happens when fear becomes the foundation of loyalty, when power comes before brotherhood, and when respect stops being earned and starts being taken. In YoungBoy's world, respect doesn't come from love. It comes from dominance. Loyalty isn't a bond, it's a contract. And when that contract stops benefiting him, it gets ripped apart, just like every alliance before it. So whether this leaked footage was staged, real, exaggerated, or misunderstood, one thing is crystal clear. The trio that once shaped a movement, YoungBoy, Quando, and Lil Tim, might never share a stage, a photo, or even a room again. And maybe that's exactly how YB wants it, because in his mind, there's only room for one king, and kings don't share thrones.